Hey, I'm Kendra Joy Draper.
And I'm Justin Draper, and this is my story.
You ready to do this? Day one home?
Day one home, let's do this.
So, let's go all the way back.
Okay.
What do you remember? What is the last thing that you remember prior to being at UAB?
So I remember Sunday morning. This had to have been June 1st. First Sunday in June. And I remember getting up and not feeling 100%, but not feeling horrible. But I knew something just wasn't right. And it was a push for me to get to church. I got to church. We were getting ready to have baptism, my first baptism, the next Sunday. So we had a class that we were teaching that morning for all the people who were getting baptized. And I remember before everybody got there to the church, I just still wasn't feeling good. And in the building by myself, I prayed and I said, God, you're going to have to get me through today. And I couldn't describe like symptoms that I was having. It was just, I felt not good. And got through the day. Next day, went to work, still wasn't feeling the best. I went to urgent care. Urgent care tested me for COVID, flu, all that they do. And they was like, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. If you have any symptoms, go to the store and get some over-the-counter medicine for your symptoms. So I go with my favorite medicine that I feel like fixes everything, which is Mucinex. So I get a bottle of Mucinex, come home, I'm taking that every 4 hours as it says on the bottle, and then I go, I'm feeling good, pretty good Tuesday. By Wednesday, I'm feel like, okay, I'm coming over this hill. I cut the grass Wednesday, but then Thursday when I wake up, it was just like things were just bad. And I knew I needed to go to the emergency room at that point. So I remember calling Dad. Dad came and picked me and the kids up. I couldn't drive. And
So I was already at work.
You was at work.
Mm-hmm.
And I
remember you texting me super early and you were like, don't leave work. I'm not feeling right, but I think I'm going to just go to the ER and see if they can give me something stronger.
Yes. And I'm thinking like, Dad's going to come pick me up. He's going to take the kids to the house. By the time you get off work, I'm going to be back at home with like some medication. I'm going to be feeling good. But then I remember when he pulled me up to the door, it took all of my energy to get out the car and to go in and to check in. And literally once I handed the woman the insurance card and my ID, and I sat back down, I don't remember much of anything after that.
Really? Well, from my perspective, your dad, he texted me and I was in a meeting that morning and I missed the text. And I went back to my office, checked my messages, and he said something along the lines of, they think he has like a little bit of pneumonia and they're going to keep him here for observation. Okay. And something was just like, just go ahead and go anyway. I remember getting to Crestwood and switching out with your dad, and they were trying to, at that point, figure out why your temperature was so high. It was like 105. But they kept testing you for, like you said, COVID, flu, and all of that, and it kept coming back negative. And so the nurse that was on call, he kept coming in and out, and he was like, I've got to get this fever down. I've got to get this fever down. Like, just very distressed about the fever. So then he says that they're going to transfer you to Crestwood, the actual hospital. And the way it was explained to me, your dad may have said this, that, just for like out of an abundance of caution, they were taking you over to Crestwood. and that because you were on oxygen, and at that point, a very little bit of oxygen, they were going to take you by ambulance. So I ended up following the ambulance. They had gotten your temperature down, but it still was like 103. So we get to Crestwood, and you're there, I believe, 2 days. And at that point, you're still on a very small, like I think 2 liters of oxygen. And I remember saying to the nurse there, I understand he's not requiring a lot of oxygen, but his breathing just sounds so labored. And I don't know if you remember this, but I remember saying to her, because she kept saying, well, we keep asking him if he's okay. And he keeps saying, yes, I can breathe. And I was like, can you breathe? And you were like, yes, but you were shaking your head, no. And I was like, I really think he's out of it. And so at Crestwood, they had limited visiting hours in their ICU.
Yeah.
So it was like a 9 to whatever, and then there was a break, at this time to whatever, and then there was a break. So it was right before a break, and she told me they were going to do a CT and then basically rule out that there was anything else going on and that they were planning on letting you go.
Yeah.
So a very good friend of mine brought me lunch at that point. And so she was there. And then as I'm getting back, they're saying that they think that you may have aspirated during the CT. And so, that, of course, I was like, what in the world happened? Like, all of this was just kind of being thrown at me at one time. Because at one moment we were getting ready to go, and then the next minute you were aspirating.
Let me pause. A lot of this I am hearing for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you all to know, as you all are hearing this, because I was recovering and it was a lot for me. I know my wife wanted to guard me on a lot of information. A lot of this is I'm hearing for the first time because this isn't like a blackout moment for me where I don't remember. So keep going.
Well, if you need to stop me at any moment,
No,
since it's your first time hearing it, you need any clarifications. So, okay, so that's when everything really started like tanking.
Okay.
So so I'm in your room, I'm in the waiting room. They say to me, okay, he's aspirated. And at that moment, I'm like, let me call your parents. So I think I text your mom first, and I said something like, please come now. And then I called, and she was like, we're on our way. And they probably could hear the panic in my voice at that point. And so the nurse was saying, just stay calm. It'll be fine. We've got everything handled. And then a doctor comes in, and he's like, we're very concerned about him. We need to get him some help immediately. I don't know if we're going to be able to help him here. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, people, like have pneumonia all the time. Because that's where we left Crestwood on. Right. And then hours later, we were doing a CT just to be on the safe side to let you go. And so that is when things the details of all of it, I may not even have correctly because it felt like something in a movie. Because it went from that moment of we're going down to do the CT to them putting us in a waiting room to a doctor coming around the corner and telling me we're going to have to ventilate him. You're going to have to sign consent. And my brain went to like, ventilate him? Like, how did we skip from, an oxygen mask, that kind of a thing? Like, what is going on? And so I just looked at him at that moment and I was like, on a scale to 1 to 10, how concerned are you about him? And he looked at me and told me a 15. So your parents had made it by that point. My close friend was there. My younger sister, who is an ICU nurse at Huntsville, came over. I don't even remember calling her, but somehow she appeared. And she knew the doctor. And so she basically was, I felt like, translating to me because, again, it felt like how in a movie where they slow everything down and things are going on around you. And I just remember like kind of dropping to my knees and just sobbing and praying and crying and praying and crying. So we went from putting him onto a ventilator to Mrs. Draper, we need you to know that we're not equipped to handle what he's going through, but we've got to get him to UAB or Vanderbilt. And at this moment, whoever is willing to take him first, that's what we're going to do. So are you okay with that? Of course, I'm okay with that. Do whatever you have to do. So they end up getting in contact and getting a bed with UAB first. And they're like, you need to sign for Life Flight. And I'm like, okay, am I going to be able to get on Life Flight? Am I going to be able to ride with him? So they radio, and it feels like hours are going by. And they radio back, and there was a storm going on in Birmingham. So they had just explained to me how, like, time is of the essence. We only have, critical minutes to get him there. And then there was a storm, so they couldn't get the chopper team assembled. So they say they're going to send an ICU on wheels. And I'm like, well, it takes, an hour and a half just to get to Birmingham when it's not storming.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have that much time? And one of the doctors told me that is our only hope. Because at that moment, you needed a machine. Your lungs had gone into distress past what a ventilator could keep you alive for. You needed a machine called an Ecmo that was going to do more than just help with the oxygen flow. It was going to do some other things. And at that point, none of us, other than my sister, knew what an Ecmo was. But the more we learned about it, there are very few people in the area, the few hospitals that are equipped with the team and the nurses who are trained for it, and so on and so forth. So it feels like hours, but the team from UAB finally gets there. And the nice woman comes up to me, and of course I have to sign all these papers. And she said, I don't know if I'm going to get him there alive, but I'm going to give you my word and tell you I'm going to do the very best that I can. So I fell out again at this point, because it's like, I'm just such in shock at what is happening, because what I want to scream out and say, like, y'all got the wrong person. Like, the Crestwood ER doctor told me you had a speck of pneumonia. And like, what is happening where all of this is transpiring so quickly? And if you need to like take a minute, I don't want to just like, I don't know if you want to record and hear all this for the first time.
No, I want to.
Okay.
I mean, because, when I finally like start like coming back to, there's a lot that I remember from that moving forward to where we are now. But a lot of that,
I feel like I'm torturing you. I don't want to do this. Is what you want to do, and I don't want to record this if this is too heavy to do being recorded. Are you sure this is how you want to hear this being recorded?
Because it's not for me. But keep going. I mean, this is helping me because I know that this is a miracle. And
several miracles, really.
And so this machine that I'm hooked up to.
So at that moment, the only chance of survival per doctors is getting you down to this Ecmo machine.
Mm.
And the problem was, even though time was of the essence in getting you down on the Ecmo machine, was that your blood pressure was not stable anymore. And so that was our first introduction to what has happened to your hands and your feet with the pressors. And so there's like, we're standing outside of your room at this point because UAB has gotten there, and they basically have told us to come say our goodbyes to you. And we're standing there, and it's supposed to be this quick transfer of them getting you on the bed and out, because remember, time is of the essence. Well, they couldn't stabilize your blood pressure in order to move you. And so that added on another, I don't even want to quote time, because to me it felt like hours. But your blood pressure kept bottoming out, and then they would have to give you pressors. And like it would just kept going back and forth, where it would get too high and then we get way too low, get too high and way too low. And I do remember the lady who was I think she was a nurse practitioner who had to like be on, like in the unit with them. And she was saying that like, well, legally I can't take that much medicine with me unless you authorize it. But I'm not comfortable taking him because I don't think we're going to be able to get there without another dose of whatever it was that they were giving you. So I remember one of the nicest doctors that was willing to explain what was going on, him running down the hallway to get whatever authorization or whatever was needed so that they could leave and they could give you, as she kept saying, the best shot at getting there. So at that point, my very good friend agrees to drive me down. She doesn't really give me an option, and I'm so thankful. And she was like, I'm driving, get in the car, we're going. Your brother and our sister-in-law follow. But at that time, I didn't even know that they were following behind us. Everybody's just walking down the hallway super, super fast, trying to get in the car. Y'all beat us there. And someone comes out to tell us that the process should take about 30 minutes to get you onto this Ecmo machine. So it's like 1 o'clock in the morning at that time. And so that was a moment of even getting to UAB where I remember driving when you left UAB to go to the rehab center. It was like a trigger moment for me because the last time that you had come down 65 in an ambulance, I didn't know if I was going to see you alive again at that point. And it was something that like I got super emotional. My heart started beating really fast and I started crying. I had driven back and forth, several times, but I guess it was the first time my mind was able to relax enough. And I just thought, man, like the last time that you were in an ambulance on 65, like you were fighting for your life, like literally. So we get there and it seems like forever. And they say, he is still with us. And I think a nurse practitioner comes out first and she tells me who's on call. And like, she has me like sign all of the, like standard consent forms of like, if you need blood, if you need, reviving, like those kind of things. So I'm just signing. So she comes back out and she's like, I can't remember. I think it was your potassium. Some number was up or low. And they were like, that's pretty normal for him being on the amount of pressors he's on, but I just want to give him a dose of it because I don't want his kidneys going into failure. And I'm like, absolutely not. We don't need his kidneys going into failure. So like however much time, the kidney doctor ends up coming out. And he does this thing where I started like basically trending when they come out and they ask you, hey, let's find somewhere to sit down. Like, I feel like they're trained when they know they have to tell you something heavy to get you to sit down. But I didn't know that then because that was the first time. And so he's like, yeah, let's sit down. And I was like, no, I'm okay. And he was like, no, let's sit down. And he says, I don't want you to panic, which of course you panic when somebody says that. He says, but, his kidneys have shut down all the way. And, I need you to sign consent because we're going to have to immediately put him on continuous dialysis, which before then I didn't know there was anything other than just dialysis. Like people who are awake and alert, they utilize intermittent dialysis where it's every other day for 3 or 4 hours. And then people who their bodies are so weak, they can't give it to them in that big punch. It has to be continuous. And so we go from ventilator needing that to having the ECMO and those 2 cannulas that were in your groin and it came up and it was helping your lungs and filtering things and that big machine at the bottom of your bed. So then the dialysis machine. And so me, your brother, and our sister-in-law are sitting in the waiting room and it just seemed like doctor after doctor after doctor keep coming out and telling us that like in the midst of us trying to do this is what happened. In the midst of us trying to do that, this is what happened. And I'm just sitting there like, what? Like, again, going back to like, we went from having a spot of pneumonia.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No.
Okay. But I don't know. It's just, it was one of those, again, I can't explain it other than saying like, it was like one of those, you're in a movie and you're like, okay, well, surely nothing else can happen. Like, surely nothing else can happen. So after several hours, they finally get you stabilized enough for us to walk back into the critical care unit that you were in. And I can't remember if your brother walked back with me. A lot of this is a blur. I'm pretty sure he did. But I remember walking into the room. I have the memory of saying to myself, like, man, they didn't even clean up the blood on the floor. Like, there was like specks of blood, and where you could see where they had like opened up syringes for different things. And like, it just was very, and we had just seen that at Crestwood where they were like ripping clothes off, putting IVs in, doing all these things like super, super quick to try to save you. So the nurse ends up coming in and he was like, we got to get this room together. He was like, this is just a hot mess. We got to get this room together. And he was like, all these cords are going all over the place. I don't know who okayed this. And I end up finding out later that he's actually the charge nurse and he doesn't normally take patients.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to mention his name, but we end up forming a great relationship with him throughout the journey. But he was the first person to have you because he said he saw all of the stuff on your chart and was like, yep, that's who I'm supposed to be with tonight.
Yeah.
And so everybody who walked in the room would make the comment, because you had somebody to come in to change the dialysis bags. And that was like a every 30-minute thing. You had the, not physical therapists, but the ones with your ventilator. Respiratory therapist, thank you. That would come in to give breathing treatments, but then also they would have to come in and suction and like make sure everything. You had the nurse that would come in and like make sure your feet were elevated, and it was like somebody every 15 minutes that was coming boom, 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 boom. And so everybody who hadn't been in the room would say, I have never seen this many machines before in one room in my life. And the way your room was set up was that like the doors were out in front of you, your bed, and then there was a recliner behind you, and that's where I would be sitting. So sometimes they wouldn't even know that I was in a room, and I would just get their natural reaction of walking in and then being like, okay, like this is not good at all. So we go through probably 2 weeks of that, where every morning was, I would get up and they would round. Shift change would be at 6:30. And so I would try to be awake by 6:30. By 7 o'clock, meet whoever your new nurse was. And they were, when I say they were phenomenal in that unit. I know them all by name. I have all of their names written down. When we go back later on this week, I have thank you cards written for them. They were all phenomenal. And it was pretty much the same few people that would cycle in and cycle out. So I learned about their families. They prayed over you. They prayed with me. We had worship music playing. Some of them would be like, oh, I know that song, da 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 da. And so after the shift change would happen, they would start rounds. And I would go out in the hallway, and it was like military roll call. Like the nurse would give all of her numbers and stats. The head doctor of the Ecmo team would give his stats. The pulmonologist, rheumatologist, cardiovascular doctor. There was probably like 15 people who would come, because it would be a doctor and then their nurses would be there. Everybody rolled up with a computer. We could try this, we could do this, we could try this, we could do that. Every day, the sweet doctor would say to me, I mean, I don't really have any better news for you, Miss Draper. Just try to stay hopeful. Try to stay hopeful. Probably about the 10th day, he started to see a little bit of improvement on your lungs, and things started looking up at that moment. I don't know if you remember this. One day they were giving you a bath, and you were on the ventilator, and they turned you to the side. And do you remember this? Because you're laughing.
I don't remember it, but I had nurses when I came to telling me about this.
Well, you ripped the ventilator out of your mouth, and like a team of people like descended into the room, and I was like, He was trying to give me a heart attack.
That story followed me throughout my 48 days of intensive care. I would have new nurses coming in, and at this time I'm alert, a little bit more alert. And all of them, every time a new nurse would come in, they will, it's their duty to read your medical record, see what, all you've gone through. And they would come in and they'll be like, oh, so you're the guy that took your ventilator out your mouth. And I was like, I thought they were joking.
Things started progressing and moving because when you ripped the ventilator out, there was this moment where the doctors looked at each other and they were like, his oxygen didn't tank. And so the lung doctor at that time was like, I'm still just not, like, I'd rather do it the right way and like pull him off the right way. And there's like a weaning process that happens with the ventilator that you had not gone through. And he was like, we've come this far at this point, even though it does seem like he's ready, I want to do it the right way. But the ECMO doctor was saying like, I mean, he looks like he's fine to me. So like, let's just let him. So even so, he leaned over to you and he was like, can you breathe? And you were like, yeah. And he was like, do you want it back in your mouth? And you were like, no.
Of course not.
And so he was like, I think he's fine. And so he's like, yeah, but just like, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. Like if we did it this way and he seemed fine and then he ended up not being fine. So I just kept flashing back to just conversations we've had in the past, like about our biggest fears, and like yours has always been being ventilated.
Man, yeah.
And to the point where you said, like, Kendra, if it comes down to that, just say goodbye.
Yeah.
And so I just was like, oh, just let him stay off. Like, don't make him get back on it. And so really, I felt like that was the first corner we turned, because at that point, they started weaning down the oxygen that was being provided by the ventilator at that point. And the thing that I learned about ICU is that they move really quickly. Like when they mention that they're gonna do something, it's gonna happen sooner than later. So it took like 2 days for them to get you at like 40%, which I didn't realize that like 20% means that you're ready to be off of it. And I may be quoting these numbers wrong, but in my head, you needed to get down to like 0, but that wasn't the case. So your nurse at that time, she and I had talked a lot because she was telling me how she she was getting ready to get married. And so she had like basically bundled up her schedule where she was with us for several days in a row, much more than 3. And then she was like, when I get back, y'all should be gone by now, because I'll be off several days because I'm not doing the 3 on, 3 off kind of a thing. So we laughed about that, and she comes back in and she's like, oh, but before I leave, he's coming off the ventilator today. And I'm like, he's coming off the ventilator. And so the doctor comes back in and he's like, yep, give me until about 1 o'clock to assemble the team, and then we're going to take it out. So we start moving, in the right direction. I remember them taking you off the ventilator. And
I remember that.
I was going to say, do you remember any of that? Okay, what do you remember about that?
I remember them saying, I'm getting ready to come off, and I remember all these people coming in the room, and I remember them start doing something around my mouth, and as they were doing it, I could feel like the tubing and everything like shifting inside, like between my lungs and like all in this area. And so the whole time I'm trying not to panic, because I didn't want, my fear has always been a ventilator. And then now that it's in and I'm becoming a little bit more alert, it's like, I don't want to panic. So I kind of remember closing my eyes, and I remember them saying, it felt like they were, I don't know what it felt like, but I could feel it. But I remember them saying, on 3, I need you to cough. And I remember closing my eyes and waiting on 3. And on 3, I coughed, and I felt them like pull it out. And I just remember like kind of cracking my eyes, because I was curious on, what was actually in me and what it looked like. And but I didn't want to see too much, because I'm like, man, if I see too much, then I'm gonna panic, then I'm gonna get out of breath, and then they're gonna put it right back in, and I don't want to go back on it. But I felt like I was turning a curve at that point because I felt like it went. I remember it happened on Father's Day, and I remember you telling me afterwards. I had been off for a while, like, this is a good Father's Day gift. You get to get off the ventilator, and I remember telling you, like, Father's Day. It's not Father's Day. I said, Father's Day is next week. Father's Day is next week.
Oh, I forgot you did say that.
And you were like, no, Justin, today is Father's Day. And I was like, no, Father's Day is next week. And you had to pull out your phone and show me that it really was Father's Day. But so much time had passed. And like I said, it was like almost like a black, like it just went black for me. So I remember like that was like a turning point of like, okay. And I remember they started weaning me off of
Right.
that. They started weaning me off as the more alert I came. But then they started doing all these tests because they were still trying to figure out what was going on.
So, yes. So all of the cultures, all of the tests, everything kept coming back clear.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, you started getting better. And so they were like, well, basically like, y'all got a miracle. We're not going to worry about what it was. He seems like he's getting better. We came off the ventilator. Then like 2 days later, they were taking the ECMO off. It may have been in the other order. I don't remember. But like very quickly after that long period of time, things started getting better. And
which was hard because people would ask like, hey, what's going on? Like what's, and it's like,
we didn't know.
We didn't know. And the doctors did not know. I mean, they were doing test after test after test.
The only thing that they could zero down on at that point was because you have chronic asthma, because you aspirated, inflammation plus that got in your lungs was the perfect storm to attack your lungs and make them go into crisis like that.
Plus autoimmune.
Well, they weren't there yet though.
Oh yeah. They right.
And so they had dismissed the autoimmune team because they had said, now what's more prevalent is we've had to shock him back. I know it was more than once.
Yeah.
The lungs have, basically quit working. The heart was in distress. The kidneys were in complete failure. We're not going to worry about the RA at this point. We just need to focus on, and they just kept telling me we just need to focus on saving his life. And so they took you off of the medication that you were on for your autoimmune stuff. And then at that point, we seemed to be getting better. So there's like part one of like, yay, we've got this miracle and you're getting better and nobody gets off ECMO this fast and we're celebrating. And then I remember at that point, you had gotten to a point where I went home for the first time. And I actually spoke at church that Sunday. And I was telling everybody, like, this machine had left. And at that point, you were on so many pressors that, like, all those machines that I explained, then there was, like, an IV thing. But just think of an IV machine that had, like, several different slots on it for the different pressors that you were on, plus the, like, sedation medication and, like, all of those things. So you would have to go in your room like this because there was just so much stuff in there. And I remember like sharing with them, and I had already packed the kids up at that point. I handed the kids off to my sister after I spoke at church. She put them in the car with her because at that point they were staying like a couple days with my sister, a couple days with my mom, a couple days with another sister. And in my mind, I'm like, all right, the next time I come back, like we're going to be talking about at least moving to a different floor of UAB. And when I got back, it was like the next week we took 10 steps backwards. To the point where we moved from just the nasal cannula to we needed the BiPAP to we needed the nasal cannula to the non-breather to the BiPAP. And then they basically told me like tomorrow we're gonna be putting him back on the ventilator because he's
the high flow.
Yes. Yeah. Because he's taking too much. He needs too much. So that at that point, your breathing had decreased, and then your heart rate started being so high. Like it was like resting 150.
Yeah.
And they could not figure out like what was rearing up again. So at this point, they start back drawing the blood, sending the samples down, and it takes like 7 days. And if it doesn't produce anything within 7 days, that's how they know it's not that. And it was around like July 3rd, July 4th. And I was so just kind of like out of it at that point. The head doctor was like, I think you should bring your kids down and let them see him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I see you. Like, you know, they don't let kids come in there. And he was like, I think it would be good for him to see them. And someone snapped a picture. And when I went back and looked at it, in your eyes, like, it was like you were like, help me. And at that point, I feel like, and I'll let you share what you were feeling, as I started praying, like I just was like, God, like, what? Like, I'm back at this feeling of like, what in the world is going on? Mm-hmm. And I remember reaching out to, I mean, she's a dear friend, but I don't feel like that's the way to categorize her, because she's older than me and I grew up going to church with her. But for some reason, God put her on my heart. And I had talked to her weeks before all this happened about something non-related, like just over like Facebook Messenger. And she was on my heart. And like, I just broke down in messages what was happening. And she reminded me that you see him as God sees him.
Yeah.
And it was like somebody reached down and like snatched me up with those words, because all I had heard was like doom, gloom, we're going back to the ventilator, we're going back to this, like, and if you go back to the ventilator, then the percentages of someone coming off of the ventilator after being re-intubated means that, like, they would just give you, and they have to, it's their job, they would just give you all of this statistical data to prep you for what is happening. And I just remember being like, this is not happening again. And so I went to bed, I went to the recliner that night, and I was just like, basically just opening my heart up, like, God, I know that you know what needs to happen in this situation. Mm-hmm. And I just kept telling myself, I'm not going to be that person who is like, well, I Googled and I this and I that, but I kept feeling on my heart that I needed to say something about the RA side of things, because it just sounded like, okay, maybe this isn't a bacteria. Maybe it isn't an infection. I don't have any type of training, but I know that if you're saying he's been on every antibiotic known to man, and you're telling me that everything comes back completely clear, and even if you tested my blood, something would come back, then what is our plan of action when we wait another 7 days? Does he have another 7 days to wait? And I remember you reaching over to me, having the machine on, because they would have you on the BiPAP at night, and then is it a rebreather or
non-breather?
And during the day. And it was blowing so fast that like your face looked like a chipmunk. And you were like, y'all got to help me. And at that moment I was like, okay, like we going into mode of, we're not going to wait 7 days. Yeah. And so that is when they decided to call back in instead of, well, before then, infectious disease came around. And I asked him those questions of, what if it is not an infection? Yeah. And he do you remember him?
Yeah, he was cool.
Funny. Yeah.
He was real cool.
I mean, I think you got to have some humor to carry that kind of load that they have every day. But he was like, we've been thinking similarly. Like he was like, I've pulled out all my big guns. I've gone to the secret wood shop in the back and, tried to hit it with this, and he's not responding. Yeah. And he was basically like, he had a sneaky suspicion that you didn't really respond to it the first time. You just got a miracle the first round. And so, he was like, well, we would need to call the rheumatology team back up, and we would need to have a conversation with them. And he said that it would probably be that they would hit him with a round of steroids, very strong steroids first. And if he even slightly responded to that, our sneaky suspicion is probably that this is not an infection. It's something else. So it's like the next couple of days, they start throwing around like, has he ever had this test before? Has he ever had that test before? And, you know, good old ChatGPT, you put it in and it's like, it starts naming these connective tissue disorders that test produces. And the rheumatology team was a little different because they had their head doctor, which we had dealt with him like the first couple of days. And he was basically like, I'm bowing out. They need to save his life. RA is not going to kill him. We're taking him off of this medication so he's not on 101 different medications. And so then another guy comes in, which you ended up meeting, and who is the doctor now. And he was like, you know, they only just pull me out when it's the worst case scenario. So I hate that I'm meeting you under these circumstances, but I'm going to do everything I can to get to the bottom of it. So he would come around, but then like an intern would come, and then like these people working their way up to being, I mean, they are doctors, but working their way through medical school. And one of the guys came in and he would be so nervous every time he came in and like almost like reading off of a script. And he was like, and I see that you had whatever test the name of it was, and it came back positive. And he was like, oh, no, I was supposed to read that in question form. Did he ever have that test? And I was like, well, you know, y'all keep asking us that. Do y'all have some results that came back? Maybe he forgot that he had that test. And he told us that you had it. And, you know, whatever it was had came back positive. And he told us that that is what they were looking at, more of a connective tissue disorder versus this being a bacteria. So in those days, do you remember anything when we started talking about changing the treatment plan?
I remember that. I remember the rheumatologist coming in with all those. It seemed like he had about 15 people in the room with him.
Yeah.
Every time he would come. And I remember them starting to change the treatment plan. And it was at that moment where I started feeling like each day I was coming around and things were getting better, because I felt like when the kids had came up, I remember like the kids coming into the room, but I was so out of it. I felt like I was going quickly back to when I got dropped off the crest where it just went black. So it was like started getting gray and hazy. And I just knew I didn't want to get back on the ventilator. And I just knew at the same time though that things were kind of going backwards. But I remember the doctor coming in, changing the treatment plan. And I remember starting to come around.
So they gave you a gram of steroids.
Yeah.
And I remember them making this big deal about it because they were like,
I remember
we are not outside of the 7-day window.
Yeah.
So we had to sign saying
Yeah.
we are knowingly jumping the gun
Yeah.
and y'all are okay with it.
I remember him saying something to the effect of like, hey, if we're gonna go, let's go. If we're gonna do this, let's do this. And I'm out of it, but I hear a doctor saying that, and I'm like,
Let's do this.
let's go, man. Like, yeah, whoever you are, I'm with you. Like, if we're gonna do this, if this is gonna help me, if this is gonna save my life, this is gonna turn it around, I'm with it. Let's go. And started progressing.
Well, they gave you the gram of the steroid, and then we had to wait a couple of days.
Yeah.
And then you were like, y'all didn't give me what y'all gave me yesterday because I don't feel the way that I felt. And they were like, because you can't handle that much.
Yeah.
Your body can't handle that much. And you were trying to explain to them that was the first time, the wording you use is basically like, it was the first time I feel like I don't have a ton of bricks on my chest.
Yeah, yeah.
And even before that, now that I say that, I remember them giving you a steroid in a breathing treatment one night.
Yep.
And you were like, y'all gave me something different because this feels different.
Yep.
And and you kept saying like, I need some steroids because I know that, you know, that gives me like a boost. And that came back up in a later conversation because they said that kind of clued them into like, okay, if his lungs are responding to the steroids, that's not fighting an infection at all, but it could be fighting inflammation, and it could be this connective tissue disorder that we thought that we had a handle on, and maybe we don't. And so they did the round of steroids, and then they ordered the medication. So they came in, they talked to us about that and talked about all the pros and cons and how they would give you this massive dose. And then, you know, within 3 days, we should see. And the first day, we really didn't see a huge turnaround on it at all. And they were worried because they were like, this is a massive amount of medication that we've given him. And really, it's like our last hope before having to send y'all somewhere else because we cannot figure out what this is. But day 2 and day 3, it's like your body just started responding to it.
Yeah.
And for the first time in such a long time, it seemed like things were starting to turn around.
Yeah. And I remember going back to like when I took that pivot back and I was on high flow, which is like the highest flow before you get on, like I had that, and I was doing BiPAP at night, and then I had the non-breather. And I remember the nurse, had a nurse that came in.
I love her.
And man, like all the other nurses were like, you know, whatever you need, Mr. Draper.
Coddling you.
How do you feel? You know, just let us know. We're going to take care of you. Which I love that, you know, which was good because I'm like, man, this is, you know, I'm in bad shape, but man, these nurses really care about me. And then I had this new nurse, and she comes in, and she's like, sir, you're on a non-breather, and you're on high flow, and both of them are maxed out at 100% oxygen. She said, so essentially right now, you're getting 200% oxygen, but you're telling us that you can't breathe. But they're looking at like my numbers, and at that time, my numbers were
good.
They were good, you know. And I remember her standing in front of me, and she was like, "Yeah, you're gonna give me this non-breather today. We're gonna let it go." And that non-breather was like my
security blanket.
Man, it was like my security blanket for real. I felt like I could not live without it, and I felt like I could breathe with it. And I remember looking at her and just kind of sitting there and giving you and her the silent treatment because I felt like y'all had partnered up.
Well, we kind of did because she had said, you know, I know the last 2 shifts have tried to get him to just try for like an hour to be off the non-breather, and he won't take it off. And I was like, right. I said, but I'm very, you know, scared for him because from my understanding, there's nothing between this and the ventilator. So if something were to happen, he would have to go straight to the ventilator. And she was like, that's all I need to hear. And so she was like, how strong do you want me to come on? I was like, you're going to have to come out strong. She was like, meet me outside at my desk. So I went, I was like, I'm going to go get my little daily lunch walk, which felt like a 5-mile walk from your room to the cafeteria. And she was like, when you get back from lunch, meet me out here at my desk. And so I came out because it was a very fancy side of the hospital we were on, and they all had like a little viewing spot into your room. And she was like, I'm going to get down in his face and I'm going to tell him that he's going to take it off for an hour. And if he needs it, then we'll put it back. But he's not going to need it because he's been at 100% for 3 days.
And she did it, and I'm going to tell you, she did it in the most professional medical way that you could. She was not rude.
No, she was not rude at all. But she was firm with you.
She was firm. Yeah. And at that point in my life, I needed that. And what the lesson that I learned out of that is that oftentimes when we're going through situations in our lives and it's not comfortable, sometimes the best feeling is someone coddling you versus telling you, hey, we've been in the mud too long. You gotta get up. You gotta wash yourself off because there's a road ahead. You're just in this mud puddle thinking that this is it, but there's a whole road ahead. And oftentimes we push those people away and be like, oh, you being rude, you don't know. But that woman literally helped me. And every time I would see her, I would tell her thank you. She was actually the last nurse before I went to the next ICU unit floor on that day. And I kept telling her over and over, I was like, listen, thank you so much because you helped me. If it was not for you, I probably still would have been on that non-breather for God knows how long holding on to it, but it was firm It was in love, and it was truth. And when she hit me with that 200%, I was like, I'm kind of good at coming back at people with stuff, but I can't, like,
But you were giving us, the death stare and
boy.
silent treatment. She was like, I know you can hear me. You don't have to say anything.
Oh, I wasn't
that
saying
makes
nothing.
it easier.
I mean, imagine.
And she was like, and you can't win the silent treatment with
Yeah.
your wife because you're going to have to ask her to hand you something to cut your food
Yeah.
up to do something. Like, she was hitting it like,
She was.
boom, boom, boom. But like you said, it was when we were outside in the hallway, she was like, I'm going to be tough with him, but it's because I know that he's medically ready.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
not mentally ready,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
he's medically
yeah.
ready. And if we don't hurry up and transition him, medically he can start suffering because he's becoming too dependent.
And see, that's the part that I really was not ready for. So when I went through all of this, of course, naturally, I lost a lot physically. Health-wise, that's another thing. But physically, I lost a lot. My strength, my energy to do certain things I would normally do. But that mental battle was something that I really wasn't prepared for. And a lot of it was super anxiety, like me really worrying myself to the point where I'm telling myself I can't breathe, but my stats is saying that my oxygen is at 100, and I knew I didn't want to go back on other medication that would sedate me or have me hallucinating all over again. But all of that I had to literally give to God. I remember at one point in the journey, I realized that I didn't have enough strength. I knew that I couldn't fight this in my strength, in my own ability. And I wasn't willing to because I knew that I just didn't have enough in the tank to try to fight through it. And I remember praying like a silent prayer in my heart. And I closed my eyes. I think I was probably on a ventilator during this time. And I literally looked up at the light and I told God, I said, God, this is your body. You made me. You created me. You know every single thing about this body and every single thing that's going on with this body. I believe that you can heal me. I believe that you have already healed me. I believe that everything that needed to be done was done on the cross with Jesus Christ. And I said, so what I'm doing now is resubmitting the body that you gave me back over to you. And I remember closing my eyes and just like, I was just at such peace because I put my weapons down. I put my tools down. I put my strength down. I put my pride down. I put my ego down. And I said, God, you got to do this. And I started leaning on him more than I was leaning on myself, my strength, and my own ability. But we made it through. And then, this journey that we're on right now is still a journey. I remember the first time that they set me up and they wanted me just to sit at the edge of the bed. And at that time, I'm fully around. I'm thinking, oh man, yeah, this and that, man. Sit at the edge of the bed? Yeah. I sit at the edge of the bed. And I remember sitting up and like, I had nothing. I couldn't sit up. And I remember like them trying to move me from like the bed to a chair because they wanted me to sit up more to help my lungs be in a better position. And I remember like literally nurses, 2 or 3 nurses had to come in to hold me as they moved around furniture. Like I remember some of the nurses that we kind of got close with, and they would literally just be holding me. Like they would pick me up and I would just be
hold, one would move furniture,
Yep.
one would slide the bed out the way.
And it was a whole little like play and orchestra thing going on just to get me in a chair. because I had nothing. I had no strength. And then I remember moving to the next floor. They moved me to a different floor in ICU after the treatment started working and things started improving. And I spent maybe like a week,
2 weeks.
2 weeks on that floor, which was still in intensive care, but it was more focused on the pulmonary side of my health. And then I remember the day that I was ready to go from UAB to this facility that focused on physical therapy and occupational therapy. And I remember each transition was different because you spend 48 days in intensive care. You get used to sounds, beeping, doctors, rounds, breakfast, lunch, dinner, shift changes, different nurses. Like you start getting into a rhythm. And I remember moving from that, and they took me outside for the first time to get in Hemsey. And I remember going outside briefly in this carport and hearing birds chirp for the first time, hearing cars drive for the first time, smelling gas out of cars for the first time. And I was like, man, this is crazy because I hadn't experienced that. And so then just finished up 11 days at the occupational physical therapy facility, which is like a boot camp. What they do there is they teach you. You work 5 days a week, 5 days a week for 3 hours a day. You have therapy, and it's literally teaching you how to do things that you cannot do, but preparing you to be able to take care of yourself at home. I had to relearn how to walk again, which was very challenging, and still right now very challenging. I had to, they teach you how to, simple stuff that we take advantage of. Brushing your teeth. Brushing my teeth it felt equivalent to me running 5 miles. Like it's like, that's serious. Mm-hmm. Taking a shirt off
still wiped you out.
Still will wipe me out. Mm-hmm. So they had to teach me all of this stuff, and they were with it. Very nice facility. Like, these people were so nice, very caring. But I think they got me to the point where I can be where I'm at now, which is at home.
I feel like when we came in, I don't know, like I feel like so many times I came in and I was definitely thankful, because we really, like, during this journey, like our house has really just been the reset. Like, we're really not here. Either we are here to sleep one night, do laundry, and then go back. And then the last 11 days have been not where the kids have to spend the night away, but it's the whole preparing to be out the whole day so that we can go see you in the evening. So we really haven't been home much. But I remember last night being like, this is the last night where like he's not beside me. And it felt like, I don't know, like just not real. Yeah. And, when you finally, like we finally got you in, today, and I just had this feeling to, like, my sister was outside with the kids, and it just lets you have that moment. And I'm so glad you were able to just release, and we could just release together, because it just was one of those things, like, like it just felt like God, like we made it. Like we made it. And we only made it because of our faith in God.
Literally.
And so many people who have prayed and donated and sent meals.
Yes.
And, that's one of the things that, like, just meeting so many people in waiting rooms, and, being in ICU, they have like these family rooms that are away from the big waiting room. And you can just be walking out to get a bottle of water, and you walk past that room and you hear sobbing and crying and no's, and being at those, knowing what it felt like to be at those moments. But our moment wasn't a moment of no return. And I'm just so thankful.
And along the journey, God sent so much confirmation and sent so many people, like having doctors praying for it, like nurses and doctors praying for us. We didn't go into the hospital saying, oh, we're pastors, we're this, like we're that. Like we were just, I was a patient and you were my wife who was, like there with me. Parents were there, my brothers were there, but to see how people would come in, they would pray with us. And I remember, like, so today is like day one coming home, and we'll dig into more of the story and details later. But I remember coming in, like I was telling you, like driving felt weird, like not driving,
Riding.
Which I don't know how that's gonna look with me going back driving and when, because it's gonna be timing. But I remember like coming in, driving, riding, and it felt like I couldn't really accept it at that time because I'm like, I just feel like I'm about to go to a doctor's appointment and she's about to bring me right back to this facility, because you got to think, you spend that much time in a medical facility, and the first really 48, maybe 40 days, I had no windows in my room, so I couldn't see sunlight, daylight, nothing,
Don't get me started on the little test that they give you. And I'm like, man, we need to be asking deeper questions than this.
And I'm like, so I go from there to the facility and to do the physical therapy and occupational therapy. So riding home, it was like, okay, this is happening. Man, I'm pulling back up in the city. Wow, that has changed. Wow, I didn't know that was there. They're building this there. Like, I'm looking at all this stuff. And then when I came into the house, it's like I sat down and it just hit me. And all I could do was just thank God, because I had a doctor at the rehab facility look at me as he was rounding, and he told me, he said, Mr. Draper, you are a modern day walking miracle with all you've been through and the place that you're in right now. And it hit me, and I just realized this is not, I can't brag and say, oh, most times people, oh, you spent 6 days a week in the gym, you eat good, which I don't do that at all, and I wasn't doing that prior to, but that's the reason why you recover. No, I believe for a fact that Jesus still performed miracles. Like, it can look dark. It can be pitch black dark. But if you invite Jesus in to your situation, which he's there with you, miracles exist in 2025. I know for a fact I probably should not be here. This should not even be happening. If the enemy had his way, funeral should have happened, a couple months ago. But when you have a firm foundation in Christ Jesus, then you invite the miraculous into your life, and you can experience that, and the miraculous will shock others as it did. But it should be a thing that we as believers are familiar with. Mm-hmm. And so what this looks like moving forward is this is still a journey. We were talking the other, and a lot of time when you say you're out of ICU and you're fine, people think you're out of ICU, you're out of the rehab facility, just as back up, running, working, doing this, back to normal. But that's not the case for me. I still have to I have in-home therapy, physical and occupational therapy, which I think is supposed to start tomorrow. And that'll go on for some time. And then from there, I'll transition to outpatient therapy too as well, because my body took a major hit, and this is a journey. And it's not just like flipping a light switch and everything immediately coming back. Because of the pressors that I was on, it impacted my hands and my feet. So my hands are like recovering. They look way better than what they were before. But they were, what was it at first, like red? And
It
then,
started off red, and then they were like the color of that black
yeah,
part
like
of there.
all of my fingers were black. Feet were the same way. Knees, because all that blood was taken, well, didn't make it to those areas because it was trying to help save my life with my major organs. They're numb. That's the reality. Like they're numb. It's like I really can't. I can feel them, but I really can't. So it's a journey, you know. Walking is a journey. I'm learning how to get better at that. There's a few devices that I've never used before that I'm having to use now. I still have the scars from the wounds of the Ecmo Machine, those big things that are healing up in my groin area. I had holes all in my neck from machines that I was on. That scars are still there from that. You know, like all this stuff like is real. But one thing I can say is I'll never take life for granted. I promise you. Like you could be good today, and you can be very bad today in the same moment. And I've learned that. And I'll never take life for granted. And like appreciating family, my wife, who could have easily been like, man, y'all keep me posted. Y'all call me. But instead was there like every step of the way. You know, reading scriptures to me. When doctors were saying they can't hear you, you know, playing worship music, speaking over my life, even when I'm like, I'm out of it and I'm not responding at all, I truly believe that my spirit, man, was receiving all of that and could hear all of that. And, you know, my parents being there sleeping on the most uncomfortable equipment at their age, you know, my brothers being there. But and then our kids, you know, having to be on this journey with us. And that's a lot to manage. A spouse who is like at death doors, not looking good, in another city, you got a job, you got responsibility, and you have 2 kids to manage at the same time, and juggling all of that. I appreciate you for that so much because you managed it well. And the church, which is like, you know, this normally would tank a church at our age because we're such a young church, not in age, but in like how long we've been in existence. And I have not preached in 2 months.
We can't wait to get you back. The funny part about that is that, you know, several months before this happened, you had started saying like, Kenja, because I speak on Mother's Day. That's my Sunday to preach. And I like to do all the behind the scenes stuff and like all of that. But I just feel like you're really good at what you do. And But no, I think the Holy Spirit was even preparing us for this. And I was reluctant because I didn't have that confidence built up. But God has moved and grown all of us and shown us, like you said, ways that you don't realize you take life for granted, you know. And he's grown us in that. But I know we've been talking for a long time, and I want to circle back really quick to something you said about, you know, you should have been basically dead and gone, and statistically speaking, but that God is always wanting to show up in a miraculous way. I think of the 1005 lessons that I've learned in this is that really the life of the believer should be as an overcomer.
Yes.
And that is what I have learned throughout this journey, is that God is most certainly able, but he's also willing.
Yes.
But we have to be firmly persuaded that his will for us is that we prosper and that we are in good health, and that we do not waver back and forth on what his plans are for us, because they are very clearly outlined in his word. And once I got myself back to that point, it didn't matter what any report said, to the point where there were people who were checking on my mental state because they were basically like, you're in denial and you're not preparing yourself for what's about to happen. Girl, wake up. Your husband's about to be gone. But I just feel like that I hope that this testimony can encourage at least one person who is in that midnight moment where it seems like there is no hope. There is, unless you give it up.
Yes.
And that is the thing that I want our children to gain from this. I want us to continue to hold on to, is that you don't lose with God unless you quit.
That's key. Unless you quit, or unless you give up your hope. And
that is not to diminish anything somebody is going through or has gone through or has ended up in a different way. I can't explain any of those things, and I'm not going to pretend that I can. But what I am saying is that for our situation, I know that we have stood on faith and on the principle that we believe that God is a healer.
Yes.
And that is all we would accept.
And God is, I mean, God is so real, and he has shown himself in ways that I could not imagine on this journey. And it has strengthened my faith. It has challenged me. It has changed me. I was telling you and my brothers, like, there's no way that you win over death like this and you remain the same. Like, I know for a fact I am not the same person. Like, I'm not. Like, I know that something miraculous happened in my life that has blown the minds of the doctors, blown the minds of nurses, and those who are, who are connected to this story and this testimony. And God is so real. He's real. And I have a commission. I feel like I've been commissioned by Christ, and those are some things that I'm excited about moving forward and doing in the future in a more intentional and aggressive way that everybody, you'll be hearing more about. And we're going to come back, and that was the whole...
What happened?
What happened?
That's the question we are getting. I'm like, what happened? And I'm like, it's been such a blur. So many things have happened.
And it's so hard to explain. Like, when you're getting, like, if you get, like, someone randomly called, or for me, it was like people sending messages through, like, parents or through you, like, hey, what happened? And it's like, all right, how much time do you really have? And there wasn't no particular thing that we could say, oh, he had a stroke, or hey, it was this, like this was what happened. But we're going to come back, because I think it's important, because there's somebody that's going through a dark time. Health, finances, relationship, and there seems to be no hope. But we want to be able to sit down and talk about, hey, this is how we felt. This is what was in front of us. This is what this looked like. But biblically and according to the word of God, this is how we dealt with it. And a lot of that has to be a renewing of the mind, because we are inundated so much with the world, with world systems, with stuff, even in church, that is not biblical. But I feel like one of my biggest goals is to share the true gospel of Jesus Christ, not the gospel that many churches have created, not the God that many churches have created, which is a false God, but the God of the Bible, the God that you can read about, the miracles that Jesus performed in human form, not spiritual, but he walked this earth in a body and performed miracles, and tells us that these things we as believers should be experiencing. So if we're not experiencing, either he's lying, or let's just say this, he's not lying. His word is not lying, it's true. But how do we get to a place where we can be faced with an obstacle, but apply the word, not your strength, but faith in the word to it, and get results? And I believe God really wants to start showing himself strong with results with people. So y'all keep praying for us. I'm home. This is day one. First stop that we had. My wife was like, what do you want to eat? You know, you've been eating this hospital food for over 59 days. You know, let's get you something good to eat. You know, like let's get something real good. I stopped by Panda Express today, drive through, got me a plate with some chow mein, some fried rice, teriyaki chicken and orange chicken. But I'm just happy to be alive.
Yes.
Like, I'm serious. I'm happy to be alive. And I can't wait to get back to church.
And you did not miss the kids' first day of school.
I did not.
So we got to get off of here and get ready for that.
Yep. Kids start school tomorrow. One start tomorrow, one start Wednesday. And Dad is alive, and Dad gets the ride in the car for drop off for that, and I'm not in the hospital.
Yes, that's huge.
That's huge, y'all. So we love y'all. Please make sure that you subscribe to the church's YouTube channel. We'll be back talking more about the journey, but also about faith. And I hope that this can not just inspire you, but hope that it builds your faith in the true and living God. God is real. Miracles still exist and happen and are happening in 2025.
Yeah.
I love y'all. Keep praying for me. Your support, your prayers are needed. I feel them. I'll see y'all soon.